Right, and we're still here with our coverage to this very significant day, the American elections, which are taking place in the United States. Voting process just started, and this very decisive day of the U.S. 2020 comes as voters in the United States are deciding whether Donald Trump remains in the White House for another 4 years, or Joe Biden will be handed the keys to become the next U.S. president. Trump, the Republican president, is being challenged by Biden, the Democratic Party nominee, who is best known as Barack Obama's vice president, but has been in U.S. politics since 1970. All eyes of the world's countries are directed to the United States, waiting for the results of the crucial elections, which will have big impact on the entire globe, I guess, on the Middle East as well, and very much indeed. Many aspirations and challenges are lying ahead for the new U.S. leader to deal with that will picture a new frame for the United States among the other nations. We will be discussing that and more. We will be going through the American election in our episode tonight. Before we delve into our discussion, first let me welcome our guest, Dr. Sherif Amir, Professor of International Relations. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Right. Before we continue on with our discussion, let me first have a quick look on the top story of the day. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi instructed on Tuesday that incentives are intensified to encourage vehicles owners to use natural gas instead of fuel. The president also urged the application of programs designed to replace old cars by new ones running on natural gases, adding that this project is meant to offer savings for citizens and provide them a chance to own new cars. The president's remarks came during his meeting on Tuesday with Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli and Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources Engineer Tariq Al-Mullah to follow up the implementation of the national project to expand the use of natural gas. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said that the president also directed that new fueling stations using natural gas are established nationwide along international standards. During the meeting, President Sisi was briefed also over ways of using natural gas to secure sustainable resources of energy, in addition to rationalize fuel consumption, as well as preserve the environment and make use of the country's plentiful natural gas production. Right, and on with our episode. And the United States founding fathers decided that one elected civilian, the U.S. president, would lead the executive branch of the federal government, a governmental structure that has remained in place for more than 200 years. Since the office was established in 1789, 44 men have served as presidents. Let's watch.
The President of the United States is indirectly elected to a 4-year term by the people through the Electoral College. The officeholder leads the executive branch of the federal government and is the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces. Since the office was established in 1789, 44 men have served as president. George Washington was a political leader, military general, statesman, and founding father who served as the first president of the United States from 1789 to 1797. Previously, he led patriot forces to victory in the nation's war for independence. He presided at the Constitutional Convention of 1787, which established the U.S. Constitution and a federal government. Washington has been called the father of his country for his manifold leadership in the formative days of the new nation. Abraham Lincoln was a statesman and lawyer who served as the 16th President of the United States from 1861 to 1865. Lincoln led the nation through the American Civil War, the country's greatest moral, constitutional, and political crisis. He succeeded in preserving the Union, abolishing slavery, bolstering the federal government, and modernizing the U.S. economy. Theodore Roosevelt, often referred to as Teddy Roosevelt or his initials TR, was a statesman, conservationist, naturalist, historian, and writer who served as the 26th President of the United States from 1901 to 1909. He previously served as the 33rd Governor of New York from 1899 to 1900 and the 25th Vice President of the United States from March to September 1901. Roosevelt emerged as a leader of the Republican Party and became a driving force for the antitrust policy while supporting progressive-era policies in the early 20th century. He was the first American to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Dwight D. Eisenhower was a politician and soldier who served as the 34th President of the United States from 1953 to 1961. During World War II, he became a five-star general in the Army who served as Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in Europe. He started highway system, ended the Korean War with a ceasefire. John F. Kennedy, often referred to by his initials JFK and Jack, was an American politician who served as the 35th President of the United States from January 1961 until his assassination in November 1963. Kennedy served at the height of the Cold War, and the majority of his work as president concerned relations with the Soviet Union and Cuba. A Democrat, Kennedy represented Massachusetts in the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate prior to becoming president. Jimmy Carter is a politician, philanthropist, and former farmer who served as the 39th President of the United States from 1977 to 1981. A member of the Democratic Party, he previously served as a Georgia state senator from 1963 to 1967 and as the 76th governor of Georgia from 1971 to 1975. Since leaving the presidency, Carter has remained engaged in political and social projects as a private citizen. In 2002, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in co-founding the Carter Center. George H.W. Bush was a politician, diplomat, and businessman who served as the 41st President of the United States from 1989 to 1993. A member of the Republican Party, Bush also served as the 43rd Vice President from 1981 to 89 in the U.S. House of Representatives, as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and as Director of the Central Intelligence. George W. Bush is a politician and businessman who served as the 43rd President of the United States from 2001 to 2009. A member of the Republican Party, he had previously served as the 46th Governor of Texas from 1995 to 2000. His presidency marked by 9/11, War on Terror, the subsequent invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. Barack Obama is a politician and attorney who served as the 44th President of the United States from 2009 to 2017. A member of the Democratic Party, Obama was the first African-American President of the United States.
Half conceals, half discloses.
Right, welcome back, and let me again welcome our guest, Dr. Sherif Amir, Professor of International Relations, and this is a very critical and crucial, and people all over the world are very much awaiting the results of this elections or these anticipated times. Why?
Because it's a decisive era in the US history, in the Middle East history, in Europe's history, in everywhere's history, not because of only the COVID-19, but also because there's a new, let's say, a new system all over the world, dividing between the right and the left, and we see it now in the United States. What we are witnessing today is not Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It's two faces of America. The first one of Donald Trump now, of the average American, who is intending to go along with the American identity, what he says, make America great again, closed borders, factories inside America, America's interests first, and then comes the world. Then we have the second one, which is the other face of America, Joe Biden, the immigration, the Hispanics, the immigrating community, and supporting some groups in other countries outside of America, interfering in their affairs, claiming that this is democracy and America is the policeman of the world. Donald Trump sees that America is not the policeman of the world. America, it's its own, it's minding of its own business because it has to be built from the inside. Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and the Democrats sees that there is a role for America to teach every country what they should do inside their countries.
All eyes are diverted today to the United States, where voting is taking place right now. And 2020 itself saw some of the very unordinary events that took place during the year. And definitely the coronavirus was the biggest event. Recess of the economy, of the world economy, was a repercussion of that. How far, from your point of view, would that reflect on the election, on the US election? How far would that reflect on the voices of the Americans?
It has already started by the mail voting through the post. And this is the first time in American history, and because of the COVID-19, and I think that this will stir some, let's not say opposition, but some skeptic voices about the results afterwards, because already President Trump is saying that he doubts about the legal fact that people could vote through the post, through the mail. And I think this would have an impact if the results will be difficult for one of the other sides. I mean, when they will approach at the end of the race, and we all know that the US elections, since the election between George Bush and Al Gore, when they recounted the voted in Florida in 2000, and the whole world was under this suspense, who will win? I think that we will witness something like that.
I imagine that we will see more than that, particularly with the mail voting and all the suspicions surrounding this issue. It might be a case here. Let me ask you, and that is, do you really think that the US presidential election would be no exception than this year's lack of normalcy?
Well, I think that this time Donald Trump won't let it go like that even if he wins. He wants to show the people that he's the guarantor of the security of America.
Yes, we're speaking about both
I know.
presidents.
And Joe Biden...
We are in the middle here.
Yeah, and I mean, why I'm speaking about Trump, because he's the one in the leadership. Until now, we are witnessing what he's doing. Joe Biden entered this race with his history since 1970 as a senator.
47 years.
Of course. And this is not something easy to deal with, because he knows the establishment inside America, which is the main enemy of Donald Trump. And he knows how the Capitol Hill, Washington, works. He was the vice president of Barack Obama.
8 years.
Yes. And he has huge experience in foreign affairs and inside affairs. The only thing that Joe Biden lacks now is that Donald Trump has made all the maneuvers trying to secure the votes for him. I mean by that, the average American. Joe Biden is depending on the voices of the immigration community. He's never...
Migrants and expatriates, yes.
Donald Trump spoke about the wall, building the wall with Mexico. Well, Joe Biden is for everyone. And let me give you an example that shows how the two men are different on a specific point. George Floyd, the African-American who was killed by the police officers
yes.
in the States. Joe Biden and those who was following said the people went to the streets and the rights have an excuse because there is racism in America and the administration is quote-unquote racist because it's not giving the African community its rights. Donald Trump escaped this by saying, well, the police has its mistakes, it happens everywhere, but that does not mean we will not support our police. And he brought the community in Brooklyn, the community in Chicago, with the majority of black people, and then he said, these are Americans and they need security, and I'm offering them security. So the question now that is being played between both men, are we going to please the average American who wants law and order with all means? As we know, the Second Amendment, all the American citizens have weapons. So there has to be law and order, so the federal government controls the situation. Or we will let all they call it the Antifa, or I mean by that the left, by all the immigration community, whether they're Hispanics or blacks, to express their rights, stand against the government, and make, for example, some sittings like they did in Portland for many days, and the governor there couldn't do anything about it. So there is two different ideas. Are we going to give these communities the liberty, the freedom to fight back against the establishment, or are we going to enforce law and order and say, because this is America? I think that today, as some of the polls, I'm not talking about the votes, they asked the people from both sides, are you going to accept the results? They said 40% in both sides said no, we would not recognize. Yes. 16% from the Democrats said we will go to the streets. 20% from the Trump supporters said we will go to the streets. See how the division is? 40% said in both sides, said we would not recognize it. But only 20% will go to the streets and 16% will go to the streets. That's for the first time.
That's not a small average, by the way.
Of course. But the 40%, they will not accept it, but they will keep calm. The problem is with the 20% who are white militias in Texas and what we call it the South, and the 16% who are Antifa and the groups funded by George Soros and others. So I don't want to say it's civil war, but still.
We really, we really have to wait and see for that, because definitely this is very critical what we're speaking about. And before we continue on with our discussion, let's take this report. And who will win the Donald Trump vis-a-vis Joe Biden presidential race? Let's watch this report.
Americans vote on Tuesday in order to elect the next president, either giving Trump another 4 years or handing over the keys to the White House to Joe Biden. It will be the 59th quadrennial presidential elections. Voters will elect presidential electors who in turn will be voting on December 14th of 2020 to either elect a new president and vice president or re-elect the Trump and Mike Pence respectively. The series of presidential primary elections were held from February to August 2020. This nominating process is an indirect election, which voters cast ballots selecting a slate of delegates to a political party nominating convention, who then elect their party nominees for president and vice president. Central issues of the elections include the impact of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, which has left more than 230,000 Americans dead, protests in reaction to the police killing of George Floyd and other African Americans, the death of a Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, and the future of the Affordable Care Act. With Biden arguing for protecting and expanding the scope of the legislation and Trump pushing for its repeal, according to the latest polling averages, Biden leads over Trump is remaining solid, despite a slight downfall in the wake of a U.S. presidential debate and Trump's diagnosis with coronavirus. Trump's presidential approval ratings are at steady levels, according to the Telegraph poll tracker, which put his approval rating at around 44%. Biden polling average has remained above 50% since October 4th, and the Democratic nominee has consistently pulled in the lead since the race began.
Right, welcome back, and back to you, Dr. Sherif. And let me here ask you, why the U.S. election this year is very much unpredicted, and the outcome of it is very much unpredicted?
Because for the first time there was hostilities between the President of the United States and the media. So we used to hear the media in the States, whether CNN, New York Post, New York Times, or Washington Post, and we all know the news. But we have seen that through the 4 years, there were some hostilities between both sides, the White House and the media, the mainstream media. So that's why it's unpredictable, because the media for the first time is voicing that they don't support this man, and they're trying to influence in a way or another the people. And at the same time, he is labeling the media of fake news. So we have from both sides two different opinions, and we don't have a clear opinion of what's going on the ground. We have battles between the White House and the media. So that's why it's unpredictable. But what is, I can say, predictable in a way or another is the economy. And we all know that the Americans, the economy is something very important for them, not foreign affairs. I have seen a few weeks ago, President Trump brought to the White House a truck from Ford or Chevrolet, I think, and it was built and manufactured in Chicago. And it has computers everywhere, and it's a super truck, works with electricity. He had the manager of this factory, the man representing the workers, the syndicates, and then he said, at the time of the administration of Barack Obama, the factories were closed in Chicago. I opened this again. See how many families are back to work. See how many things. So he's playing this card. This card is very crucial for the Americans. This is a way of his own media. See? So he has a speech of his own way to the people, and that's why we don't know exactly as foreigners how it works in the United States, but he knows how to speak to his people, that there was a factory closed and I opened it again. Do not forget that COVID-19 was called by the US president the Chinese virus, and he closed many investments in China because he played also this card that Americans should have their factories inside America, not outside. So he had his own communication.
But that, in a certain way, affected the United States-Chinese relations.
Of course.
In a way or another. And also, actually, China took it in favor of its own economy, by the way.
At a certain way, but still that's why he said that the job is not yet finished. He needs 4 more years to make this job again done. Look what's going in the South China Sea. There are the military boats, the Navy boats of the Americans and the Chinese face to face. And we don't know how it will end, this confrontation. But I think that he's trying to pressure China by all means so the Americans would regain again its supremacy. On the other hand, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and all the Democrats saw that we have to appease China. We have to work with China. It's the dragon of the economy, the world economy. We have to have good relations with them. But if the question is, the average American, how he accepts both speeches. Should we live in peace with China and lose some jobs for that because we have to pay, or have our jobs inside but we will lose the relations with China? This all depends on the Americans today.
So, since you brought up this issue then and the economy and how the Americans are seeing that, then we'll have to go through the debates that we have seen between the both candidates. Because we have seen the first one, it was 1-0 to Biden, and the second one was 1-0 to Trump. Let me here discuss the main points that were discussed, because they went through everything, all their policies, their economic vision, the strategies, health systems, education, everything. Let me see how you view the points that they discussed, both of them, and both vision regarding different issues. Before we go to the foreign relations, because we have also to go through the Middle East, because this is important. Yes.
Well, let me say that the average American wasn't satisfied of the debates, because, as you said, they went through everything, and the Americans want to see a line being drawn clearly who's for real American interests and who's against, who is harming American interests and who's against. I think that Joe Biden, in the first debate, he won the debate because he drew the line of the traditional establishment that Donald Trump defied from the beginning, since the campaign against Hillary Clinton. So he was for, let's say, the educated class of the real politics, that Donald Trump is the man using Twitter, the man not trying to be friendly with the media. Donald Trump is being obviously speaking against the criminals coming from the Hispanic and background, that he crossed all the red lines. And I think some Americans accept that. They do not wish to see this kind of bold talking. When we came to the second debate, Donald Trump played on the mental capacity of Joe Biden, because Joe Biden had brain surgery at a certain time in previous years, and it affected much in his capacity at a certain time. And he played this card. It was a red line. He crossed it again, and he said, well, Sleepy Joe, he called it like that. Sleepy Joe, you cannot react even to what I'm saying. He used another card, Kamala Harris, the candidate for vice presidency of Joe Biden, which she's half African, half Indian. Kamala Harris, I think that this was maybe the mistake that the Biden campaign made, and Trump seized this opportunity to attack. Kamala Harris was in the primaries against Joe Biden, and she attacked him severely, and she was very harsh about everything about him. And then he chose her as, like Mike Pence, for example, he chose her for. So first thing, Donald Trump said, well, the candidate as your vice president dislikes you. And she said that and that and that about you. I'm not the one saying, she's the one saying that. And some of the Democrats said, this was a mistake. How you choose your adversary who just attacked you before, and then you get her with you on the campaign on the same ticket. So Trump said, I'm not speaking from myself. She's the one said that about you. Look, for example, Mike Pence. He's very straight about all the president says. He is following all the orders, and President Trump is perfect. So this was one of the mistakes.
There is a kind of coherence between him
and Mike Pence
and the vice president.
And Mike Pence appeared at the last moment. We didn't know during the Hillary Clinton campaign. He appeared at the last moment as someone unknown. He never criticized anyone, so everyone sees that he's a nice man. But Kamala Harris, she was under the spotlight, and she was against the person of Joe Biden from A to Z, and then she became his follower. So this was a mistake. He used all the debates made by Kamala Harris, he used it against Joe Biden again, and he signed, it's Kamala Harris, it's not me. This caused many debates inside the Democratic camp.
Yes.
It was a mistake, of course.
But then they brought up several strategies, and I mean here, when they spoke about whether to close the borders with Mexico and the 15 families that were stranded and separated from their own children, they spoke about the health care bill of Obama and whether it was good to apply it or not. They also spoke about how they see the relations with different countries and entities, the Middle East, Europe, China, Russia, Iran, and many other issues, very strategic talks that went through in that debate. And it was the very first time that each one say clearly how he view what he sees towards that, and they were definitely both of them at odds. I mean, they were completely different in their vision.
It even got personal in family affairs, because Joe Biden's son is very active in what we call it the behind-the-scenes transactions with foreign leaders, as Jared Kushner does, for example. And when he went to Ukraine, President Trump said that he made deals with the Ukrainian government, Joe Biden's son. And President Trump said, I want an open investigation for what Joe Biden's son is doing in America's name during the office of Barack Obama, and when his father was vice president, what was Joe Biden's son doing in Kiev, in the revolution there, and why he was settling things, settling some accounts for personal affairs also. He wanted that. So this is one of the things. What we see that is very different in the opinions, of course, if we want a clear vision about that. Of course, Joe Biden and the Democratic camp accused intervention, and they say Russia is influencing
influencing, yes, the United States elections.
And Trump always refused this. And Russia keeps quiet and never makes any statement because it's
none of its own business, by the way.
And they're enjoying the scene, of course. Why not? I think that President Vladimir Putin, he understands very well what's going on in Washington, so he's enjoying what's going on as debate, that he's the superstar of all that. Donald Trump sees that, and we have seen it in the Middle East, when they pressured Trump to make military strikes against Syria. All what he has done, he just launched some missiles to an open field, airfield in Syria, and that's it. And he didn't want to go into the war there. He said that all the military servicemen in Iraq will get back in Afghanistan. So there's something very different about his vision of political foreign affairs. Concerning the Middle East.
No.
Okay.
Before we go to the Middle East. Okay. Before we go to the Middle East and how we are watching this election very carefully, how will the US election affect the world, notably the Middle East? Let's watch the report.
The US elections are keeping the whole world on the tenterhooks today as to whether Donald Trump will be re-elected as Republican president or whether, on the contrary, it will be Democratic candidate Joe Biden who will win the elections. In foreign policy matters, the reports of the Pentagon and the Council on Foreign Relations point out that the current and future challenges facing the US in the Middle East region are to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions, settle the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, support the allies in the Arab Gulf, stabilize the situation in Libya, Yemen and Iraq, as well as attempt to put an end to the alliance between Syria and Russia and Iran. Trump's prospects in the Middle East and accordingly his actions on the ground during his first term are based on strengthening relations with Egypt, Saudi Arabia and Israel, while maintaining a more combative position with Iran. For his part, Biden has worked in American diplomacy and military policy in the Middle East and has had experience in negotiations with Syria, Iran, Israel and Iraq. Meanwhile, Iran is expected to be in the highlight of the foreign policy during the next U.S. administration. There are no signs that another Trump mandate could lead to change in the relationship with this country beyond pressure through new sanctions and covert operations. A Biden administration will seek to restore a nuclear agreement and move towards reapproachment with Tehran. The Democrat has stated that he does not have much hope in this respect. Already he has stressed that the most intelligent way of dealing with the threat posed by Iran includes returning to the 2015 agreement. To this end, Biden is inclined to use democratic methods to ally with other countries, though the easing of sanctions on Iran may cause some of the states in the region to move away from this position. As for Iraq and Afghanistan, both Trump and Biden claim to wish to withdraw troops from the conflict in which they remain. And although neither has a concrete strategy for doing so, they differ on some points as to how to carry out this withdrawal.
Right, welcome back to you, Dr. Sherif. And to which extent do you think that the choice of the Americans today would really reflect on the whole world? To which extent do you think the world is closely watching those or this election?
Well, let's start by Europe. I think that the Trump administration was very harsh about NATO, about the European Union, and I think that Trump had some, let's say, some difficult times with President Macron and Chancellor Merkel, and even at the time of Theresa May, maybe it was Boris Johnson, some things are settled. So he had some opposition inside the European bloc, because he used to use the term, even with Japan and South Korea, we pay you, we protect you, you should pay us back. Openly like that. And he said it to Japan, North Korea, and South Korea. And he uses other cards. For example, approach with Russia, which not very positive sign for the Europeans. The same thing with North Korea.
Rapprochement with North Korea was something.
An earthquake,
yes.
Political earthquake. Joe Biden, on the other hand, is the traditional camp, NATO, but NATO has a role everywhere on the planet. And then...
I guess this is Trump live? No, it's Joe Biden.
This is Joe Biden.
It's Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Yes. He's live there from his campaign. Yes, please, go ahead.
I think that Joe Biden is the traditional camp, NATO, and NATO has the possibility to act everywhere as a replacement of the UN, as they did in Libya. And then the same thing with the approachment of all the American traditional allies, whether it will cost America any money, no problem. The most important thing that there is a global agenda that should be followed. Russia is the enemy, North Korea is the enemy. Well, Iran is something that should be appeased in a way or another, because the Gulf states are not really favored in the eyes of the Democrats since Barack Obama's administration. By the way, at the end of Barack Obama's administration term, there was a sense of fear inside the policymakers, the foreign policymakers in the United States, that especially when the popular revolution broke out in Egypt in 2013, that Washington will lose the support of Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Egypt. And these are the three cornerstones of the American presence or the American influence in the Middle East. And we have seen at that time that Russia was coming back to the scene. We in Egypt starting to see Russia in a friendly way. So America was losing everything in this camp. So I think that there is two different camps. Joe Biden, I think that he won't have the same friendly relationship with Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia as Donald Trump has the same relationship. I think that there will be some...
We're speaking about Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
At large, not the...
Well, why I'm speaking about the person, because Donald Trump's administration had the policy of creating good relations with the person they're dealing with. For example, in North Korea, he said about President Kim, he said Kim Jong-un is a nice guy. And he spoke about him as favorably, and he said he's a nice guy, and he met him, and he signed agreements with him. So this one...
You mean here he personalized relations?
Exactly, exactly. Okay. And with France, he said that he doesn't go along with President Macron. And this, for the Americans, or let's say the establishment, they never spoke about the person. They spoke about the policy of a country. Donald Trump broke all that, and he speaks about some persons.
Persons.
Exactly.
He addresses persons
and he favored some in some elections. He favored Benjamin Netanyahu in the prime ministership election in Israel, for example. So he knows how to deal with some people.
So because
Yes.
I'm running out of time and I have two important questions that I really
go
need
ahead, go ahead.
The Middle East and
Yes.
how the U.S. election would reflect on the Middle East.
We have two main questions about that: the Israeli-Arab relationship and Turkey. Yes.
And Iran,
Well, Iran, if there is...
but definitely Turkey.
Yes,
Definitely.
because when the Arab countries now are approaching with Israel, that means isolation of Iran and Lebanon. Also, Hezbollah is being very weak now because of all this approachment that's taking place, the peace accords signed with Sudan, Israel, and the Gulf states and Israel. The main problem is Erdogan. Let's say Erdogan. Now I'm personalizing, because he's a man who is playing all the cards in the same time, war with everyone, and he's trying to be friendly with Russia, and suddenly he's against Russia, and then he's friendly with the Americans, suddenly unfriendly with Trump. Trump is, and the Americans, or let's say Joe Biden, for example. Joe Biden is trying to be traditional in this. Turkey is part of NATO, and we have to deal with Turkey. Well, Trump is using also the American interest. Erdogan is being helpful or not. When he's a friend of Russia, he's not. When he's our friend and doing something, he's positive. But Trump knows that Erdogan lost all the cards as an American ally. He's in war with Egypt, with Saudi Arabia, with the Gulf states, with Syria, with Iraq. Even he went to Armenia. He's in war, everyone. So he's not someone...
Nobody spoke about his threatening to Europe, for an instance.
The traditional
to
card.
the Mediterranean, for an instance.
Of course.
Bringing down a Russian aeroplane, for an instant.
And human rights inside
Ukraine and
Turkey.
Azerbaijan, and this, and he's interfering
In
there.
Armenia
I
and
have no
Azerbaijan.
idea.
Yeah, and human rights in Turkey. Why everyone is silenced? That Turkey
Yes,
now...
by the way, we give our condolences to the
Of
Turkish
course.
people because of the very, very...
the earthquake.
Yes, this disastrous, this catastrophe that took place, and people are in
course.
shelters, and they are in very bad situation. We feel bad for them,
Yes,
and hopefully things would get better for them, because definitely we have nothing to do with the Turkish people.
That's why I always say they're under oppression.
Yes, we get back to what we were speaking about, and Egypt and the United States.
Yes.
And Egypt and the United States, and they always enjoyed this kind of strategic relations that depended on the interests of both countries. How do we expect these elections to reflect on their relation at this upcoming stage?
I think that in the past 4 years, President Trump understood many things about Egypt's position in the Middle East. Egypt is a stronghold, it's the rock of stability in this region. He understood also that we are a sovereign country, we don't get orders from anyone. But still, we are a friendly country. And we have a respectable president who gives his assessment, and it's always right. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, when he speaks with President Trump listens because he knows that he is the man in the situation who knows how to analyze and give the diagnosis. And it's true. We don't blackmail like Turkey blackmailed them. We say what is true. We fight terrorism, and we say we have to fight terrorism. So I think that the relations between both countries, Washington and Cairo, would be excellent.
Yes, we are. We hope so.
Yes.
We definitely hope so. We are awaiting, and we will be covering the election over the clock and throughout these upcoming hours. Dr. Sherif Amir, a professor of international relations, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And as I said, we'll be covering the elections and the process throughout tonight and throughout the upcoming hours until the results Stay tuned for more coverages coming up after this. And now I'll leave you with the top stories.